So now we're going to talk about Keith's second ayahuasca ceremony and the transformative experiences he had as a result of it. Hope you enjoy.
And then a couple of days later, the shaman left me after the next morning when I actually woke up. He checked on me and he left. And I was left to my own devices for a couple of days. And then a couple of nights later, he turned up again. And we did it again. And then I really got an education. And it started off with floating around in space and watching the planets revolve. But then a voice came out of the darkness and said, "Have you finished playing? Are you ready to work?" And I thought, who's that? And but I recognized it as a voice of authority, and that's something that I should respect and listen to. And so I just said, yes, okay, yes, I've finished. Yeah, I'm not here to mess around. I'm here to work. So yeah, give me something to do, help me. And then I woke up again in a school, in a classroom. And I was sat in a chair at a desk, and there was a lady as my teacher. I was alone with the teacher, this old lady. And she was just stood in front of me. And she gave me an education in my behavior, in my trauma, in how to heal myself, in how to behave in a healthy way instead of in a harmful, unhealthy way, with regards to myself and to other people. She gave me an education in conflict resolution within myself and for other people. She taught me all sorts of incredible things, but in effect, it was a teacher-student setting. I was literally sat at a desk, and she would give me an introduction to the lesson, whatever it was. Then I would have to kind of perform the lesson by way of a test. And then if I passed the test, I could go on to the next. So it was a progressive education. But if I failed the test, she was very patient and respectful. And she was like, okay, no problem. Let's just go back and redo that last one again. Try again. So I'll try again, and I might have to try several times. But in the end, I passed. And it went for lifetimes, not hours. In this reality, it was many hours. But in that reality, I had many lifetimes of tuition. And it could have gone on. I just was exhausted by the end. So I asked her if we could stop. And then when I asked if we could stop, she said, yeah, of course. And then I just sat up, bolt upright in this reality. And I was awake and sober, and everything was fine. And everything wasn't fine. It was incredible. But, I came out of it clean and straight. I just woke up and everything, I was like it had almost never happened, but profoundly life-changing. Everything had changed. My behavior, my psychology, my parts of my body had been healed. Emotionally, I'd been healed. But not just healed, I've been given tools to move forward with as well. This is the most important thing. I've been healed of my trauma up until that point, but she'd also given me the tools that I need to maintain equanimity and equilibrium and harmony in my life, despite whatever new trauma might visit me. And that is a gift from God, literally.
Yeah, enough. Yeah. Did you do another ceremony after that, or was that?
No, I didn't need anything. I don't know if I'll ever need to do it again, because what?
Once you've, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got everything that I need. So yeah. I'll never say never, but yeah.
That was something that I heard when in one of my trips to Peru. There's an American shaman who'd built a retreat center out there, and I remember him saying clearly once, it's like, if you go and you ask the question and you get the answer, why do you need to keep going back and asking the same question?
Right.
Why would you do that?
Or you're not listening.
Yeah.
If you need to keep going back, some people need to go back because of that's how it works. They need that amount of time and that amount of medicine. So I'm not trying to say that you only need 2 doses. I'm not saying that. You might only need 1 dose, but you might need several. But it depends on whether or not you're actually listening. if you're just going out there and smashing a shot of ayahuasca and having a weird psychedelic experience, and then you just go home and you carry on living your life as you have always been, then what's the point? You're just wasting your own time. You're not listening to what you're being told, and you're not applying what you're being told. But if you go each time and you are listening and you are applying what you're being told, but you do still need to keep being treated with the medicine, then of course, whatever you need. But you need to listen and you need to act. Too many people can't, they haven't got the discipline or the self-control or to act on what they've been told. It also takes a lot of courage as well, I would say that. So sometimes we lack the courage to make the changes that are necessary. And therefore, sometimes we might need a bit more medicine, because she might give us that little bit more courage and might keep pushing us towards the place where we need to be. But if we're willfully ignoring the messages that we're given, then we're wasting our time and we're wasting her time as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm always careful not to apply kind of too much judgment, like you say, to say, if someone wants to do it once and never again, someone wants to do it 1,000 times. Who am I to say? I mean, that's really not for me. I think the really important point is, like you say, is approaching it with the right amount of respect for the people who are giving it to you, the people who are kind of, who the custodians of the wisdom, if you like, to approach it with proper respect for them and what they're giving to you. The interesting thing you touched on there was the physical healing that you received. Because I've done a few chats with people, ex-professional rugby players who've had, 10 blackout knockouts, multiple head injuries, multiple leg breaks, multiple surgeries, and they've said that the physical healing has been incredible. What was your kind of experience of that? In terms of the kind of physical benefits as well.
It was secondary. I'll say that much. That's how I experienced it. It was secondary. It was ongoing while I was getting the education. So that education was definitely the primary focus of why I was there. That's how I experienced it. But all of the time that was going on, what I recognized was happening to my body in the hut, lying next to the shaman, that my physical body was being rocked side to side alternately on one over my hips. So I had a lot of tension. Actually, the vast majority of people have a lot of tension in their hips and store trauma and fear in their hips as well. And so I became aware of my body was being rocked over my hip bone, and it was like a massage, for want of a better word. So I was being massaged on one hip, and then it could have been an hour, or it could have been 2 hours, it could have been 3 hours. Then I'd swap and I'd be rolled on my other hip, but I wasn't doing anything. I was being rolled, and then I was being shaken, like trembling.
Right.
But it was medicinal. It was a healing, physical experience. It wasn't a reaction to, I don't see it as a reaction to the medicine. It was part of my healing was this trembling, which I now understand a little bit better. It has to do with the soft tissues and the connective tissues in the body, which need to be re-educated and loosened up a little bit, for want of a better description.
Interesting.
But it's really interesting. Sorry.
No, interesting you talk about hips, because I before I did my first ayahuasca ceremonies in Peru, I was due to have another hip operation. I've had one hip operation, which was an arthroscopy, a kind of clean out and a tidy up, but it hadn't really healed properly, and my rehab was slow and painful and all the rest of it. And I was due to have another arthroscopy, but then after my ayahuasca ceremonies, I went back to see the physio, and my hip was moving in a completely different way, and the pain had gone. The pain hadn't gone, but it was just moving in a different way, and the pain had got to a point where it was completely manageable. So I didn't need to have the second surgery, and I haven't had to have any more surgery since then. So it's pretty. I was like, I kind of went a bit like you went with no I didn't do any research, and I thought, oh, is it going to be kind of some crazy psychedelic experience? Is it going to be like wacky, wild, all that stuff? But I didn't get much psychedelic experience. I just got a kind of a transformative kind of, healing process on my hip. I was like, I'll take that. That's
great.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened for me.
It's interesting what you were saying about the rugby players with the concussive injuries, because that's something that as a charity, maybe we'll go on to talk about the charity in a minute, but traumatic brain injuries, so much focus, especially in research, but generally anyway, a lot of people seek healing from psychedelics generally for mental health issues, and a lot of the research aligned with that is also done on mental health issues, but there are physiological healing. There is physiological healing potential in psychedelics. We're going on to start our own observational study into the effects of psilocybin on traumatic brain injuries. So we're looking at the brain and not the mind, and that will have a knock-on effect on behavior and psychology, we believe. That's the point of the study. But there's so much more in it than just mental health benefits. There's physiological.
That's exactly the kind of the feeling. I wouldn't call it a conclusion that I've had, but certainly my gut feel says that there's so much more to it. The mental health part of it, albeit, not to diminish all anxiety, healing, anxiety, depression, PTSD, addiction, trauma, eating disorder, that is so important. But there's another huge area over here, which is, like you say, at the physical level. At least 3 people I've spoken to have had severe injuries, be it through accident or trauma, repeated sort of, sporting trauma, whatever. But people who have had severe climbing accidents, a Hollywood stunt woman who's had an extraordinary fall and basically broke her entire jaw and teeth and splintered everything. Ayahuasca experiences seem to help that knit together again. Really mysterious, incredible stories of physical healing. The rugby thing is an important one right now because of the lawsuit that's been taken out against the governing body, and people are talking about not having heading in the UK football, even professional football, not having any heading in training because of the repetitive brain injury. So it's such a huge topic now. And that research is going to be amazing. When roughly do you think that's going to be done and ready to publish?
COVID.
Should have thought the COVID lens. Can I just ask a question back to the experience? When you say you experienced, time, reality, consciousness, and from a different perspective. How was there kind of an answer, or was it a case of like you experience a place kind of without question and answer? Question and answer don't apply in that reality, in that realm. How did the interaction between, as I say, space, time, matter, consciousness in that?
It was observation. Yeah. It wasn't about answers, questions and answers. It was observational. I could just observe its nature, which I don't think is atypical of a psychedelic experience. It was just, I observed it as it is. So I didn't need to ask any questions because I could see it. And I experienced it. So it's bordering on the doors of perception, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. In my own ayahuasca experiences, I've had moments where I've actually felt, you talked about your body shaking. I've had moments where I've actually kind of maybe felt my mind, but my kind of brain shaking a bit, and then getting, because I've been in that sort of question and answer, that kind of Western philosophical thing, prove, disprove, make up, do you know what I mean? That sort of almost question and answer thing, right? And then just a little bit further on from that doesn't exist. That whole question and answer point, it's not there, and it's like you're kind of, whatever it is, part of your mind, your brain, that's once the question and answer just is you just kind of, like I say, just perched a little bit above it and then peering into a different space where those questions aren't relevant. It's like, okay.
Or they've just been answered just because you can see it, or like observe it. That's how I saw it. I didn't actually have questions. It was just, I just saw it, and it all made perfect sense.
Incredible. So we go from, you know, professional soldier, we come through your kind of period of you know, feeling trauma, difficulties through Peru, have the kind of the experience with ayahuasca, and then how does the Heroic Hearts you know, thing start? How does that chapter begin? So
there's been a big gap between my experience in Peru and me starting Heroic Hearts Project UK. So first things first, Heroic Heart Project UK is a non-profit, independent non-profit organisation that is our main objective is helping UK military veterans and emergency services veterans gain legal access to psychedelic therapy. And we primarily do that by way of taking people on retreats to Peru or Netherlands. But we're also engaging in the political process of trying to get these substances rescheduled here in the UK so that additional research can be performed. And then we might start looking at decriminalisation and stuff like that. So it's not just taking people on retreats, even though healing now is our kind of main objective. We are engaged in the political and scientific and research basis as well. So having said that, when I came out of the jungle in Peru, it had been so life-changing. But when I came home, no one knew anything about psychedelic therapy, ayahuasca, nothing. People think my son thought I had been going to the jungle and licking frogs and had gone mad. But I knew how important it was, but no one else knew anything about it. And I had other focuses, other priorities at that point, just integrating my own experience. But before too long, I kind of settled into my own power. And I realized that I had energy to spare. And I realized that psychedelic therapy was really important to me personally. And that I believed that a lot of my friends who I help professionally by way of my Tai Chi and Qigong and meditational practices, I realized that psychedelic therapy is complementary to those practices. But there's no organization here in the UK that allows for people to go and have these experiences. There's no facilitation here, not legally, of course, but there was no organization for veterans where we could take a group of veterans and allow them to have a psychedelic experience if they felt like it. And so I was about to try and build that said organization, but it was then that a friend of mine in Peru introduced me to Jesse Gould. And Jesse Gould is an American who is the founder of the Heroic Hearts Project. And so it started in America. And we spoke, myself and Jesse, and we thought it best that instead of reinventing the wheel here in the UK, I would just start the UK branch of Heroic Hearts Projects, hence Heroic Hearts Project UK. And so we're autonomous, but we're fully aligned philosophically and politically, and all of our intentions are well aligned with our US brothers and sisters. And we've got a Canadian branch now as well. But that's really how it started. Heroic Hearts in the US has been around for about 5 years, been doing lots of retreats very successfully. Well, I only started Heroic Hearts UK in March last year. So it's early days, but I've got an really incredible team around me of academics, researchers, just a really incredible team with expertise in all different realms like drug policy reform, the science of it, the politics of it, the social sphere that we're involved in as well. So it's really exciting, and we're doing really exciting things. We're hoping to do our retreats, but then we're also hoping to do this observational research study. We've written the protocols now, so it's moving along nicely. We're engaging with legal advice to look at what we can try and achieve politically, engaging with collaborators like you to socially raise awareness of what's happening and what's being done and the importance of what we together are trying to achieve. So it's exciting times for us and for our communities as well. But it goes beyond just the veterans communities. But you know, we've only got so much time and energy, so we focus on a small section, cross section of society, and then we'll see how far we can go.
Yeah, I think, like you say, there's literally, I'm trying to think of an area that it doesn't touch, you know, like, you know, because it's, the sort of the distinction between health and mental health is kind of blurring anyway. You know, we understand it's health now, right? Obviously, there's different manifestations of ill health, but you know, there's virtually no element of health that it doesn't touch, right? There's no kind of academic discipline that it doesn't seem to touch. You know, the kind of that, you know, the metaphor of the mycelial kind of network. It's just kind of everywhere, you know, and I think what the beauty of what you guys are doing is that you're taking the sort of the almost like the kind of the trippy mystique out of it, and you know, and it's not, like you say, not something you approach frivolously. Although I say no judgment for people who want to have a nice time, no, absolutely no judgment at all. But for certain constituencies to understand the nature of the work, it needs to be presented in a certain way, you know, and it needs to be presented in a responsible and a mature way. And that's I guess the sort of part of the idea that I've had, is that, you know, I come from a sort of communications background, and when you're talking now, I can see you in a room full of communications professionals telling this story and going through it, and then just being like, and pennies just dropping all over the place. Because like you say, the knee-jerk reaction is you lick a toad, you know, you kind of, you know, and again, no, you know, when people start to understand what that toad medicine's about, then you know, then we can have a proper discussion about that as well. But yeah, it's that kind of slightly tittering behind the, you know, oh, Toby's gone and done ayahuasca. Oh, isn't that funny? You know, it's like, you know, it gets pigeonholed as like a gap year frivolity. So Heroic Hearts at the minute, you've got the you know, the research studies going on. You're working actively at the kind of political levels. What do you see the next sort of, you know, key developments as being? I mean, what, from where we are now with this kind of growing body of evidence over here, we've got the anecdotal evidence which is mounting over there. What do you think is the most important thing that we can do right now?
For the UK, are we talking?
For the UK, yeah, let's take the UK, yeah.
Rescheduling. It's got to be rescheduled. All as you asked for my opinion, so it's just my opinion. But if we don't get it rescheduled, nothing's going to happen. Because no more research is going to be able to. It's so difficult. The government's response to requests for rescheduling is that it doesn't need to be rescheduled because you can still do research. But the conditions upon that research at the rescheduling level, at the scheduling level that is currently on, is restrictive in the extreme. So for all intents and purposes, you can't do research on psychedelic substances. Certainly not ayahuasca at this point, just because it's a mixture. You can't narrow it down to like one, because it's the mixture of plants. It's not the same as psilocybin where you can isolate it. But if we don't collectively and collaboratively move this argument forward in an adult way, you know, respectfully and logically, rationally, then if we don't get it rescheduled, I don't see how anything else can happen, right? Because we can't do any more research, and then the research will provide the data that the decisions should be based on. Because currently the decision to criminalize psychedelics and schedule them in this current way isn't based on any data. It's based on, well, I don't know what it's based on, but it's not based on science. So we need to get it rescheduled so that we can gather the data and make a decision based on what the data says. And I believe the data, I mean, it already is saying, but it's very, very promising. And I believe it's only going to keep going in that trajectory, which is to convince us of the power and the potential of psychedelic substances for healing. And then once we've got that data, and it's going to be hard to ignore that data, we make a rational decision based on that scientific evidence to reschedule, to do more research, and then we can start talking about allowing it to be distributed in clinical settings, therapeutic settings, and decriminalizing. And then before long, it feels like it's inevitable legalization, but we're still, there's so much work to be done. Yeah. So much work to be done.
So in terms of that work, if we were to say set out a kind of not an achievable is maybe not the right word, but set out kind of a process by which this can start to take shape. And I mean, I guess it takes individuals, political developments, whatever the kind of power balances between different sort of competing interest groups within the governments and so on. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. But from a person in the streets perspective, is it about trying to add some weight to the drug policy reform groups, to try and maybe get involved? I think this is the 50th year of the 50th anniversary of the Misuse of Drugs Act, as I understand, having spoke to Neil a couple of weeks ago. So there's maybe going to be some campaigns going on with that. So is it about kind of lending campaigns, writing to your MP? I mean, what are the kind of practical steps that you guys have identified?
I think there's lots of different ways. It depends on what your priorities are as an individual and as a collective, right? So ours are focused purely on, at this point, veterans, and we believe that the political decision is going to be made, we hope, based on science. Therefore, the science is a priority. We need greater access to more data to make a decision based upon it. But that's our priority. Someone else's, but like your priority, for instance, as an organization, is a grassroots social focus. So just raising awareness socially, and not necessarily with a focus not necessarily on a focus on the science or the politics of it. It's just socially, look at what's happening. Look at this anecdotal evidence. There's something there. Why are we not looking at this in a more adult, rational way? But then there are also cold, hard scientists that are only looking at the science. And then there are politicians that are only looking at the political machinations that we have to go through to achieve this. So I think there does need to be a meeting and a collaboration between all parties, but it is perfectly fine if your priority is science and you're a scientist. Focus on what you know. And if you're if you're interested in the social impact and greater awareness, then go out there and start singing. Or if it depends what your focus is, what your skill set is, what your priority is. But there does need to be a coming together of us all, and we collectively, I suppose, put pressure on our government.
Yeah.
To start making decisions based on science and not just some weird bias. It's very strange and cruel. It's cruel because it's restricting people from getting the healing that they need.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess there's no family that's not touched by these kind of issues, right? There's no family that doesn't have someone who's maybe got a substance problem or an eating disorder or a bit of anxiety here or a relationship problem there. I mean, because that's just life, right? that's the cards.
I think it should be said, though, respectfully, I think it should be said that psychedelic therapy isn't appropriate for everyone. It's not appropriate for everyone, for everyone's condition. And it's not a panacea either. Like we mentioned before, it takes a lot of hard work. You got to listen to what you're being told and you've got to apply it. So, and that's a lot of hard work, but you need support and you need the resources to be able to do that. So it's not just about disappearing off to the jungle and drinking something and having a whale of a time and coming back and forgetting all about it. You need a support network to help you integrate that, even if it's just a partner that cares. But then you'll also need someone that understands that experience. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a psychotherapist either. There's a lot of talk about that at the moment, that it has to be psychotherapy assisted, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. And in a way it always will be that because of the nature of the mind, but you don't need to be a qualified psychotherapist to be able to help someone integrate a psychedelic experience. I don't believe that to be true.
And sorry.
No, so my point is that it's not just about going and taking these drugs, these substances, and then carrying on. There's a lot that needs to be done professionally, it needs socially, to make sure that it's integrated correctly, safely, and respectfully. It's because otherwise it can get, it can be dangerous.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I've seen you said earlier, a really good point about these sort of tools and techniques are complementary. So your Tai Chi, your meditation, cold water, you name it. There's all these different techniques you can use in conjunction with the kind of the plant medicines and psychedelics. And I've seen a few sort of internet discussions around, like someone like Sadhguru has said, oh, you don't need psychedelics. All you need is a kind of mind control practice, and I felt that's. I didn't feel offended by it, but I think I feel that is potentially depriving people of a tremendous opportunity to work with both, and bring them together into something even more powerful and even more transformative. And like you say, it's not a mandate. There's not going to be like an ayahuasca passport, or a kind of, you have to have done, 10 psychedelic experiences before you can go and do something. No, I mean, because like you say, people who have a kind of, I heard it described as like sort of tenuous anchor to the kind of reality of the real world, don't need that broken, to kind of go off into another realm, because they might never get it back, so it's definitely something to be handled with care. And I think you said before, kind of the right reverence, I think was a word you'd used before, reverence and respect, safety, particularly for women having these experiences. That's something we're kind of focusing on, trying to build kind of best practice protocols for kind of due diligence and research for women about to have these experiences, because safety is the key point, right? So thanks a lot, Keith, and I'll be in touch.
My pleasure, man. But it's been awesome. Great. It's been great fun, man.
So thanks for watching. As ever, do the usual stuff on social media, subscribe, like, all that stuff. If you want to check out Keith's work, it's heroicheartsuk.com. That's heroicheartsuk.com. Thanks for watching. Take care.